You alright, guys? I'm the world around you, and this is Pause for Thought on Threshold FM. And whether you're listening to this as it goes out or you're listening to this on demand via the Threshold FM app, it don't really matter because there is no now, there is no past, and there is no future. Everything that could happen is happening to everybody and everything right now. Anything that isn't happening right now is impossible. And you know who's making sure the right things are happening? The Men in Black, otherwise known by some as the Time Police. And let's have a song. This is a song I tried to fit in last week but couldn't. This is On the Eve of War by Jedi Mind Tricks and Jizza. Have you ever seen a black car with people inside it that are dressed in 1950s clothing? Maybe you've seen a shadowy figure outside your bedroom window. Maybe they're not a rapist or an aspiring murderer. Maybe they're just a peeping Tom. Or maybe they're a member of the real Men in Black. So, was the Men in Black series a way to introduce the idea to us? Or was it to confuse people about what it is they actually do? In the films, they're only interested in aliens, protecting the Earth from the aliens, but still just, from aliens. Whereas the real life Men in Black are supposed to protect the very timeline itself to ensure that it all stays on track and is as it should be. And seeing how we're talking about films, let's take a minute to think about all the films that have existed where people attempt to alter, protect, or otherwise, like even just observe the timeline of that particular universe. You've got all the Terminator films. There's about 8 of them. The films in the MCU, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, they became a weird, sort of, kind of confusing, weird timeline, jumping, time-travelling story. Assassin's Creed is another convoluted time-travelling story where they don't even go back in time, they just use a machine to see back in time, and that changes time. It's nonsense either way. Donnie Darko, mate, speaking of fucking films that didn't really make much sense. Donnie Darko, mate, that's a time-travelling film. There's hundreds, possibly thousands in it. Doctor Who, there's a fucking huge example, mate. The idea that one guy can go around protecting the timelines to make sure something that's supposed to happen, happens. So, just who are the Time Police in it? And why did they let Fritzl rape his daughter, or allow for the deaths of at least 2,977 people at 9/11? Why did they make it possible for Elvis Presley to take a child as pretty much as a pet? Why did they allow people to be conned into believing that crop circles are made with a piece of wood on a rope? Other than being obvious monsters, they are the protectors of our timeline according to some, but just what type of creature are they? Now, I'm going to be dead honest. The MIBs are one of the things that personally I find quite creepy, probably the creepiest out of most conspiracy theories. They're supposed to be able to just sort of slip in and out of you and our world at exactly where they need to be, innit? Like imagine you've got a piece of fabric, or let's keep it taxidermy relevant, say you've got a piece of rat, and then you get the needle, sewing needle can appear anywhere you want it through that rat's skin, innit? Now, if you imagine that the MIBs, the Men in Black, are the needles, and our plane of existence is the dead rat, then does that explain it? It makes sense to me, innit? But, you probably aren't always dealing with dead animals and that, but either way, there's loads of stories about people seeing them through the windows. I think I touched on it last week, slightly, or maybe the week before, I can't quite remember. Everything's starting to blur into one. But let's get into him anyway, we'll get into him. So this week, Jack is the man inside the Men in Black. Now, OnlyFans content aside, the MIBs are pretty freaky, innit? I'm not going to insult your intelligence, but they are literally just men dressed in black suits, except they have the power to appear out of nowhere. Appearances and disappearances are associated with a flash of bright light, almost like time travellers. In Terminator, when Terminator appears, there's a flash of white light in it. In the Goobacks, mate, in South Park, the people that come from the future and speak like that, they appear with a little flash of light as well, innit? And I watched the Brian Cox lecture where he discussed time travel, and he said something like, if you can figure out a way to bend light, then you'll potentially be able to travel through time itself. Now, when he demonstrates this, he shows it that it's he shows, imagine like creasing a piece of paper without actually creasing it. So just sort of put your fingers on the ends of a piece of A4, either end of it, and just slide your fingers together across the table. The paper will arch, won't it? And then you could pretty much touch your fingers together through the paper. And that's how we try to show our time and our dimension itself is flat. But he says if you can bend it from outside, then you'll be able to pass through. And that's potentially what a black hole is, which is kind of interesting. It's like a naturally occurring fold in space-time, according to this lecture that I watched, where I didn't watch the lectures that were... I didn't watch any of the lectures from prior to it. I just watched that one because it was about time travel. And even then, a couple of years ago. And I'm simplifying it and probably misremembering it, and I'm not a scientist in it. And I see signs of fucking aliens and demons in pretty much everything I watch or look at. So I mean, like, I might just be ill, but like, so you know, everything I'm saying there about Ryan Cox and what he said about time travel, take it with a pinch of salt in it. I may have misunderstood it. Now, I've gone through a lot of different accounts of encounters with the Men in Black, and they kind of sound like the grey aliens when you look at the descriptions of them. The greys, not like the greys that are supposed to exist, but the greys that you see in South Park. Again, another South Park reference, not even like fucking, 10 minutes in, twice. Except they look like the girl one in South Park, if that makes sense, when that alien dresses up as a girl. I can't remember what episode, but mainly, though, because they seem to have pale white greyish skin with no lips or hair, except they paint their lips on with lipstick when they are seen to have lips. And we know this because some fella, I'll go into later, but some fella fucking had one turn up at his door, and the Men in Black wiped his own face with his arm and smeared the red across his face, making it look like lipstick and that. But we'll get into that in a bit. But I was wondering, with the makeup wise, like, what if that's why makeup was invented? What if makeup was a means of readying the population to the idea of no one looking like how they actually look? We all know that a woman that we can think back now. I think all of us can think now, like whether it's your mum, your sister, your auntie, someone from school, someone from college, university, from work. The woman that you see who could be the crackhead who's always on the bus but always makes the effort. You know, you wish that she wouldn't make the effort. But either way, we all know a woman that looks fucking rough as fuck. And even worse, when they take the makeup off. You know, like fucking covered in dents in that fucking crater face. You know, I don't know what you call them in your area, but where I grew up, where you have when you see a particularly like ugly woman, men as well, I guess, though, with like fucking the mad stuff going on the face, you did get called crater face. Now, I know that it's wrong to call these women liars for concealing their identities underneath these layers of fucking stone and mud, but fucking... Well, it's wrong, at least in society's eyes, but it's alright when you're with your mates, though, innit, in your front room, and that's what I like to think that this is. You know, I'm just in your front room, or in your ear, or you're on the bus, or in a taxi, or, you know, driving to work, or in work, or at school. I'm just whittering in your ear, like a friend would, like that weird friend does, who doesn't quit, and doesn't know when to stop, who just doesn't fucking leave you alone. Anyway, fuck me. Another thing that's frowned upon as well in society, rather than just, you know, calling women crater face or fucking calling them liars for wearing makeup, one of the other things that's frowned upon in society is telling everyone about aliens and ghosts and demons. So that seems to be what the MIBs do. They're like the unseen, unrecorded hand that guides society away from aliens and demons. At least for some people anyway, because other than the descriptions of them and what happens during their encounters, no one actually knows what the Men in Black are, or whom they are, or what it is that they do when they're not, you know, knocking on fanatics' doors. Back to the makeup thing, though. Think about it. The Men in Black are supposed to be completely bald, so it makes more sense for them to disguise themselves as women, because there are more wigs for women than there are for men. Like, you don't get many men's wigs, do you? But you get loads of women's wigs. I mean, a man can wear a woman's wig if he wants long hair, or, you know, wants to look a bit feminine and that, I guess, but I'm using it sort of in the plain terms. Wigs are more so aimed at women, innit? And fake eyelashes as well, mate, and fake eyebrows. If you can get eyebrows tattooed on and that, innit? Lots of scope anyway to make a completely new character upon an alien's arrival to our world. Now, That would also explain why during a global crisis shops are still allowed to sell makeup. The alien visitors need to be able to disguise themselves. Bald as a coot, a lot of them. No eyelashes, beards, moustaches, pubic hair, chest hair or head hair. Madness, mate. They also speak without inflection or expression, completely monotone. But I've got an idea about one of the witnesses at least, and I'll tell you their story, and then if I can get it in, I'll tell you my thoughts on it. So there was this bloke that was called Dr. Herbert Hopkins. Not sure what he was a doctor in, I couldn't find that out. But he was also a hypnotist. Now, this was back in the 70s when hypnotists were real. Not like the showman of today that just turn your Auntie Rachel into a fucking chicken for a few drunk people to laugh at on a Friday night down the Legion. Real hypnotist. Hypnotists are usually used a lot as well within ufology to try and recount memories of abductions and stuff. That get locked away, the information that gets stored deep inside a patient's brain. Anyway, I'll set the scene for you. Set the scene. It's a relatively warm September, late evening, and Dr. Herbert has just taken his belt and trousers off, and he's sat at his desk with nothing but his gravy-stained shirt on and tighty-whities, note-taking, fucking scribbling away, writing up the notes from his day doctoring at work and about how to sort his notes that he'd been compiling about aliens and UFOs possibly, and if his evening goes well, he might even reward himself with a little, flick through the notes he may or may not have been collecting about his neighbour's nighttime activities. No evidence of that, obviously, but if he takes notes about aliens too, then I'm thinking, maybe I've got some other things in common with this guy, but who knows? His nightly romp readings will have to take a back seat though, because on this night in 1976, someone belled him claiming to be a fellow ufologist, asking if he can turn up and meet him and have a chat with him. Naturally, fucking big boy Herb said, "Yeah, mate, no worries. Kettle's on." So he went and popped the porch light on before popping the kettle on, and as he did, there was a knock at the door. It was the bloke off the phone, except it wasn't a bloke. Not to say that it was a woman, innit? Like, I know I use the internet a lot, so I know better than to get into the whole fucking gender debate, especially on a thing that's recorded and it is going to stay there permanently. But that's irrelevant anyway, because his visit was a men in black, or a man in black, an MIB. Pale skin, untailored suit, bright red lips, intimidating presence, bald, no pubic hair to speak of, blue eyes, which, to be fair, are sometimes just described as bright, but contact lenses though, I know, contact lenses, they're also something that is associated with makeup, and makeup is usually made from stones and rocks, and so that would mean that if aliens cover themselves in enough fake tan and that, they become earthlings, potentially, at least to like a scanner from a satellite or something. Anyway, this guy at the door was a tall, skinny guy in black clothing, like all the others, except in this meeting we remember what happened. The MIB asked the good doctor to remove the copper coin from his pocket and hold it in his palm, and then told him to watch it. Now that coin started changing colour from copper to silver. Now for those of you that might be a bit thick, copper is like a sort of a dark brown colour, so it's to turn to silver, like sparkly. That's quite a big difference, isn't it? And but that's not the only thing that happened. No, like the colour didn't just disappear and change. The coin itself disappeared. It's just gone completely. So I was wondering, could this have been a type of hypnotism itself used against the hypnotist? Because he obviously, like, have hypnotism used against you, you've got to believe in hypnotism. So they know that this guy believed in hypnotism, Dr. Herbert, but is that why he was susceptible to being hypnotised, or does being a hypnotist make you unsusceptible to being hypnotised? I don't know. If you're a hypnotist and you're listening, fucking tell us in the Discord or something, or fucking send me a message and tell me. But either way, they used this anyway. Whatever skill it was, whether it was like some weird fucking machine that did it, or it was hypnotism, whatever it was, they simply altered the man's perceptions of reality, possibly, like, so he didn't think the coin was there. Maybe these people are just normal people, and then using the power of deception, that by these people this time, I don't mean like these people, again, I'm on the internet enough to know not to say phrases like that. I mean like the fucking men in black, these fucking like demonic entities. Like, are they just normal people in a suit, like a poorly fitted suit, so they can't be recognised in a lineup when they're not in that suit? Because you'd think, it was a stocky guy, and then you see these skinny people, you're like, oh no, never mind. Anyway, but if they are just normal people and they're using the powers of deception, hypnotism, or even like a drug like fucking scopolamine, maybe these operatives are able to get into people's heads and sort of negatively appeal to the primordial fear of the unknown that's in all of us. Because, like, I'm first to say, I know I'm an adult, I'll admit that. But I know that everyone, everywhere, is a little bit afraid of the dark. Whether it's because you live in like a fucking in a city, and it's dangerous to be walking around in the dark, or whether you live in a forest or a jungle, you can't be walking around in the dark because there's bears or jaguars or panthers or a mountain lion, you know. So there's reasons to be scared of the dark, but they're the reasons that we're told of. What if there's other reasons to be scared of the dark? Maybe the darkness is full of these fucking creatures. Maybe all the darkness in your head, you know, like I've tried to explain this before. You know, the darkness that's in your head, like you can see the things that you can see through your eyes, but then there's all that darkness around everything you can see that sort of frames what you can see. They're the bit where you can see the things that you imagine, like if you was to imagine, like, you know, like stare at the thing in front of you, now stare at the back of the person's head in front of you, and if you are shagging your missus while you're listening to this, fucking well done, sir. Fucking, but anyway, stare at the back of the person's head in front of you if you're on a bus or whatever's on the wall, and then just focus on all the dark space around what you can see, like around the ridge of your eyes, if you like, and then imagine like a lion or a cat or something, and you'll see it in that gap, innit? Now, is this where these creatures, in that darkness there, is that where these creatures normally reside or affect the world from? Now, I fully understand that might seem a bit confusing, but what if these things are the so-called angels that each of us apparently have, or the demons within us that people speak of? Maybe when you get so heavily invested into the world of the paranormal or the extraterrestrial, maybe you manage to manifest or possibly even release these creatures into the physical world around us. Now, I know it sounds unlikely, but the Men in Black, well, I'm saying the Men in Black, the MIB, let's call it, if there's only one, we're going to refer to it now as an MIB. So the MIB, no, he did it again. The MIB wasn't able to finish his meeting in the regular way with Dr. Hopkins, you know, where they like fucking completely wiped the mind and that. Because the entity this time is quoted as actually saying something along the lines of, "I'm going to have to nip off, mate, because my power's fading. I ain't got much time." And then he limped down the staircase outside his porch and used the railing to help himself down the stairs before fucking off into the distance and being engulfed in a bright flash of light. Now, my idea is that the MIBs erase the person's memory after a meeting, making sure to instill the fear, but not leave a lasting impression of their appearance or demeanour. That's why they have nothing that is actually fucking tangible in evidence, you know, like there's nothing descriptive about them. They all kind of just sound like a bit like Jason Voorhees without the mask. But what if the lack of the defining features is the mask itself? Anonymity is a great disguise. Like, if you can look like everyone else, you're less likely to be picked out or noticed. Now, if you couple that with how the 80s had a bit of androgyny in the air with men wearing makeup and that, and now that's happening again, does this mean that in 10 or 15 years' time, there's going to be a lot of stories about people meeting MIB agents in the late noughties? You know, like 2008 and that. They're all fucking listening to, I don't know, fucking 2008. I think that was, I mean, one album I think from around that time was like Kanye West's 808s and Heartbreak. So they're all like, oh, I was listening to that, you know, and then, you know, I thought Pinocchio was a masterpiece, and then it fucking, there was a knock at my door. You know, I don't know, that's like a dramatisation, you know, making it up. Who knows, though? Realistically, who knows? Anyway, let's have a song. This is Astronaut by Professor Green. These warnings normally might be enough to stop a lot of people from doing what it is they're doing, but what if for certain fanatics it's not enough? What if it spurs them on? There are bound to be anomalies in the general public, and I'd argue that it's usually the super intelligent people that don't know when to stop pursuing something. So what if this extra bit of description is the way that the MIB has been able to finally get to this guy? Because he wasn't put off by his findings or the things he investigated. That didn't disturb him, even though he's supposed to have found out stuff about aliens and that and got really heavily into it. That didn't put him off. This could have been like his 5th or 6th visitation from the MIBs. Maybe they just got fucking sick of coming. They knew they couldn't kill him, so they were like, well, we can't kill him because it just proves his evidence, but we'll scare the shit out of him. So I thought, fuck it, you know, I'll not wipe all of his mind, we'll just fuck him up for a bit. Because it did. It really did. It messed with him. Herbert's family supposedly returned later that night to apparently find him staring at Nout in his house just into the openness, fucking terrified of what went on. And I did hear on one video and read that he apparently, when the family came back, he'd had all the lights on. Like, that would make a difference to these creatures that appear through light. So I don't get why you would think that'd be a good idea. So he clearly wasn't thinking clearly. And for what we know as a doctor, is an intelligent man. Doesn't seem very intelligent, so it must have really got to him. But I can't help but think, why would an alien entity knock at your door or make contact through the phone first in order to ask you to destroy your findings? Because if they can make that coin disappear, why can't they just eradicate the notes that the people have collated? That's where it kind of falls down a bit, innit? Well, what if they're not aliens at all? What if the phone itself is fucking super important? You don't need electricity to be able to use a landline phone either. At least in the UK you don't. It can just be plugged into the phone thing. You can turn all your electricity off in your house. Your phone line will still work. Now, what if these telephones are a direct line to other people, both metaphorically and physically? Maybe even a way to contact whatever our outside world is. Like, think about in the Matrix, in them films, you know, the phones are the entrance and exit points to the simulation. And in Life on Mars, the phones there used to connect Sam to the real world where he originally came from. Is it possible that phones and TVs are there to constantly make us forget things and control our interpretation of the world? Now, the MIBs don't really need to turn up at your house to tell you to pack it in anymore. They can just constantly have it coming out of the telly, but we don't even realise it. Anyway, getting back to my point about the aliens or the MIBs disguising themselves, you know, they can do it easily as women. Now, do you know what else would have been really easy to disguise yourself as? A hippie. Specifically, a dirty hippie. And there are supposed to have been fucking loads of dirty little hippies knocking about in the 60s when there was a huge influx of alien sightings. Also, there are reports of MIBs and aliens in the 50s, and the 50s, you know, in like America and that would have been fucking loads of people there back in the US who served in the war, quite possibly with some form of PTSD or something else, you know, removing them from reality, even if it's just because they haven't tasted the brainwashing of civilization for a while. So, is it because of the lack of government-grade brain scrubbing that we have this influx of alien sightings around this time? This could also almost, you know, I was going to say also explain, but I don't think it categorically describes what's going on, but it could almost explain away the Cold War as well. Because if you think about, like, you know, Russia versus America, Russia was also heavily involved in World War II. I'd say probably more so than what America was. So the Cold War, could that have been a way that both sides could explain away the aliens that were being seen and the weird shit people were noticing? They could just be like, oh, the Russians could be like, oh, it's the Americans, whatever you're seeing in the sky, it's the Americans, whereas the Americans could be like, oh, whatever you're seeing in the sky, it's the Russians. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's just a way to explain it away, and that's why it went on for so long, because they were trying to figure out how the fuck do we hide them all again? What's going on here? How do we do this? Why are people noticing all these all of a sudden? Why am I noticing them all of a sudden? Who are they? What do they want? Do they want to come in for a brew? Do they want to eat me? Do they want to use us as food? Do they want to harvest our blood? Do they want to harvest our gold out of our sewage systems? You know, you just don't know. Because maybe the aliens, though, were always visible, but we could constantly be hypnotised, as I said a minute ago, to not see them or think about them. Like the silence in Doctor Who. Going to be a lot of fucking sci-fi references this week, but how can I fucking help myself, you know? Now, maybe we've been hypnotised to not think about them, whereas they hadn't been for a while, or it's at least been interrupted. So to explain away the shapes, they were like, oh, that's not a spy craft. No, it's not a spy craft. It's not a weather balloon either. So, yeah, it's an alien. And then they sat around in a room and went, yeah, we told that one guy that what they saw was an alien, and he's gone fucking mental. He's gone to the newspapers. Everyone's screaming and running around in the streets. We need to do something. And they just fucking bell up the two leaders of the country, just belling each other up, be like, "You alright, mate? Hello. Do you mind if can we have a quick war? But not a hot war. You know, we're not going to actually hurt each other out. Just can we just pretend that we're fighting? Are you seeing all this shit in the sky? Like, everyone's noticing it. We want to say it's you, and you can say it's us. That's fine. It's fine. You know, like when you're a kid, not when you're fucking a kid. When you're a kid, when you're a kid, and you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. like having sex with adults, and you ring your mate and you're like, can I say I'm staying at yours tonight? And they're like, yeah, well, I'm going out as well, so can I say I'm staying at yours tonight? And then neither of you are staying at each other's houses, but your parents, who in this case the parents are the population of the country, think, oh, they're staying over there, so they're fine. Just in the same way that they think the aliens are the Russian spy planes or weather balloons, just like or the American spy planes or whatever. Fucking completely unintended tangent. Fucking weather balloons. I had something for fucking weather balloons. Oh, fucking Roswell, mate. Roswell. A lot of people say Roswell was a weather balloon, but what if it was actually like a real life version of when the light falls from the sky in the Truman Show, which I'm sure has probably been suggested before by people. It's probably not a new thought. And then whoever or whomever or whatever controlled the dome that we live in had to think on their feet and promote the concept of aliens. So maybe the Cold War wasn't the reason at all. Maybe it was just because whatever Roswell was happened, and they were like, fucking hell, we can't have them know that we live in a film set. Fuck me, they're going to be livid. So they just made up, aliens, tell them it's aliens, they'll never believe it, and then people did, and they're like, oh, fucking hell, that worked a bit too well. Anyway, the implementation of the Cold War, using that to to explain away the recording, sound and visual technology that surrounds us in this film set that we live in, if we do live inside a realistic version of the Truman Show, and that's how all of that combines. They've mixed it all in a pot kind of thing. I've lost myself here, so I know for a fucking fact I'm going to have lost most of yous. If you're keeping up with this, you must have a pen in your hand, or just you're tapped. But I am trying my best in it, but I've just distracted myself too much with the fucking spycraft stuff. I got lost in the Cold War bit there. Like, I do have notes and that in it. And I do use them. But then I look away and then going off in my little head thinking about stuff, and then I try and bring it back. And right now I'm trying, like, while I'm saying all this, I'm thinking of a way to bring it back to my next point, but I don't really know how to do it. I'm just fucking chirping on about nothing. And there we go. Hey! A lot of people say birds aren't real, innit? They say that they're drones. But what if they're just portable speakers, mate? And they're just added to our film set in order to add a bit of ambience to a certain area? Because I bet now, if you go and listen, just stick your head out your window now, go and listen somewhere, you won't hear a fucking single bird. And if you do, go outside your house now and have a listen, record it with your phone, and then go onto Instagram Reels or fucking TikTok or something, and then tag me at World Around You, your recording of the outside sound. You won't hear a fucking single bird, mate. You're not going to hear him. Now, that being the case, if you go into the forest, do you hear birds where you'd think birds are going to live, in a woods? Do you bollocks? You don't need ambience in a forest though, do you? It's a forest. It's already got a certain mood and a bit of a good feel to it, It doesn't need the speakers hidden in there. Maybe the woods were the first thing used to hypnotise humans in the past, because we used to live surrounded by trees. Because think about the Middle Ages. There was fucking loads of trees back then, but as far as I'm aware, no radios or televisions as such. There may have been like dynamo-powered personal stereos left over from the Stone Age, but a lot of the rock music at that time period had been lost thanks to the great floods, like the biblical floods of the time. The MIBs existed back then though as well, in the Middle Ages, still associated with the unknown, but aliens and other worlds didn't seem to be on the tip of everyone's tongue at the time, so they hadn't really been thought or imagined up back then. So they still existed, but they had a different thing assigned to them, because back then everyone was obsessed with fucking demons, mate. And that's where the MIBs come into it all. That's what they were thought to be. They were thought to be demons. Some even believed that they were all of the same fella. They thought that every MIB, all the men in black were just the devil incarnate. And that's weird, isn't it? It's weird that a strongly religious figure would go door to door. Well, anything to do with religion would go. It's weird that they would go door to door telling people to forget what they know. But what if they are all the devil though? Like the devil is supposed to be the greatest deceiver, so that means like 2 or 3 of the identical devils could be at your door, because that's just a bit of smoke and mirrors, isn't it? He's already there, he's deceiving you, he's making you think that there's 3 of them when really there's only 1. There might not even be any, but still deceiving you. But honestly, If the devil is the best at deceiving people, then surely the devil would actually be God, and God would actually be the devil. Because surely the devil would have tricked the world into seeing a false reality anyway, and believing that his arch nemesis is actually him. And that's if the devil is the lord of the underworld, rather than just an alien or the king of the hollow earth. But if I was an evil overlord, I would want you to believe I had your best intentions at heart, and that I was actually a great source of power and peace, whilst also making you think that there is a truly evil entity that remains just out of sight, who actually does want what's best for you, but I'd make you think that he was evil, and anything that they're trying to do is wrong, and there's going to disrupt everything. Because that way you're either worshipping me or fearing me, either way. And even if you become a devil worshipper, you're then worshipping and fearing the same deities. But I don't want to get lost in talking about the devil and God, because I reckon I could probably go on about that for fucking hours if you just fucking wound me up and left me on it. Now, I don't know where these records of MIBs stem from in the Middle Ages, because I'm not too sure where they would get recorded notes from. I don't know what survives from the Middle Ages. Honestly speaking, don't even know when the Middle Ages were, because I don't understand how there is a middle. And after I looked up all that Anatomo Fomenko stuff, my idea of the human race as a timeline has fucking dissipated me. I don't even got a fucking clue anymore. But the only descriptions of the MIBs from then that I can find is that they seem to be in places that they shouldn't be, and they would be wearing black robes, and they would exhibit non-human behaviour. But what if these people were just part of the Inquisition, or if that was going on at the time? I've been playing a lot of games with the Inquisition, that's probably where that's come from. Or they could have been some form of invading force rather than demons. But that'd mean that there's an invading force now. So maybe they were real. The MIBs were real. They weren't an invading force or another army or something like that, you know. Some beliefs around the MIBs seem to assign them as a protector, a scary protector, but so is a dragon. But instead of guarding the gold and jewels, the men in black are in charge of maintaining and controlling the timeline. Maybe they're a sort of renegade force from the future that has tried to go back in time to fix something that they see as a problem rather than accepting a societal change. But much like in the Terminator, it's probably caused a huge paradox and repeatedly makes new timelines where they're at war with their enemies, who I can only assume must wear white robes or suits, because that would explain the whole good versus evil, the whole dark versus light stories that have been told since ancient times. But maybe the men in white were defeated by the men in black, meaning that they've got to now preserve a very specific timeline where people can't be properly made aware of their existence in the world, and instead have to try and remove any mention of them until the time to present themselves is made clear, or until they can find their way back to the future. They may just loop around in a never-ending cycle, but what do they want to do once, what do they want to get back to the future to do? Are they trying to raise an army of darkness? Maybe there's some form of alien time-travelling thief, little time bandits, mate, that decided they'd visit the planet of the apes, as they'd call it. Maybe they managed to identify 12 monkeys early on in our ancestry, and they're experimenting to see if they can make a certain type of life form or produce a certain element by dabbling with little things in the past, then jumping around. Could that be what the Black Knight is? The satellite that orbits our Earth that no one stakes a claim to? Maybe the reason it's always existed is because it's parked there and the MIBs are trying to get back to their ship, but because they can't get back to the exact correct time or dimension, it's just always going to be stuck there until they get back to it or finish the war through time that they may or may not be fighting. Now, you might think that they're just intimidating because we don't understand them, but there was an encounter in Cumbria where a Kodak produced photograph where an astronaut appeared in a photograph behind the child that was in the picture, which I think was the photographer's child. Again, though, if you've listened to past shows, fucking very strange that George Eastman's company is embroiled in yet another conspiracy. Kodak verified that the image was real, and this eventually led to a visitation from a couple of men in black to the photographer's house, who called themselves Number 9 and Number 11, two numbers that are obviously heavily involved with conspiracy and numerology and angels and all that, But I guess if you imagine that the Majestic 12 do exist, then these men in black could be the Majestic 12, but in the same way that, like, James Bond is called 007. Like, someone else will be 007 when that James Bond dies, and then they'll still be James Bond 007, but they'll just have a different face and a different personality and all that. Well, probably not different personality because they're all orphans, aren't they? And they've all been sort of MK Ultra'd into being assassins. Anyway, nothing to do with Men in Black. Just another film reference and another film name about 2 minutes after I've tried to list as many film names as possible. Anyway, because I know it's going to have gone over people's heads. I know people are going to have ignored it. People didn't care when I did that one about all the boating references. It took me about 3 hours to find out all them boating references. You know how much I had to fucking read about rope to be able to try and make like 4 minutes of fucking nonsense about boats happen? It's fucking hard, mate, and I don't know why I keep doing it to myself. It's not even worth learning this stuff. Like, not stuff like that. It's worth learning about the MIBs, but not really about fucking boats. Like, who needs to know about boats, mate? That's why we've got boatmen and fucking and sailors, navy and fishermen. Anyway, enough about boats, but maybe these 12 figures that exist through all of time and creation, they just replace them with another one of their creatures, kind of thing. Some people, though, they tie these numbers to angels, but unless there's something that I'm missing in my research, there's only 7 archangels, and then what seems like limitless regular angels, so that doesn't really link the 12 and the MIBs to angels as such. It does link a very specific episode of an anime I once watched that said there was 12 angels that existed, and they all wanted to destroy the world, but that's just a cartoon and isn't based on... Well, it's not based in reality or even modern day, so we can't take much from that, but it turns out there's a good chance that even the Men in Black stuff isn't based in reality. And I say this because of a bloke that claimed to be in the American Air Force's OSI unit. He claims that he was paid to be a disinformation agent, and that, to me, fucking, that sounds amazing, mate, innit? Like, I'd love that job. I do it naturally. Like, you've been listening to me, if you've listened to me every week, that's what I'm doing. Like, I'm not purposely, but... I do it without trying. Like, even if you gave me a simple book to read, a simple fact book, I'd completely misinterpret it or remember it wrong and not know either. Like, if the UK has got one of these misinformation forces, I would love to be involved. Because I'm about 3/4 the way through writing a new book now, which is about 150 fake facts. Now, I use real facts to build the fake facts around them, which is apparently what the OSI do, or did. Or did they? They'll also go back and then alter that information in a sense of saying that wasn't true, but now we can tell you this instead of that. That was a lie we had to tell you at the time, but we'll tell you this now about that piece of information there. But realistically, then, they're not really telling you a lie or telling you anything that's true. They're just fucking changing the story that they're telling you, and they'll go back and forth with it, again and again and again and then again and again and again, flipping it back on how it was. But what if they're not actually ever lying? What if they are actually some form of time travellers, and because the past has been changed, they all have to come back to these people and retell some of the information to the people who have been moved from one timeline to this timeline, which in a way would explain the Mandela effect as well, which I think we'll have to do an episode on, but I don't know if I can be arsed talking about that for an hour. But I think I've spoke enough here, so fuck me. Let's have a song. This is Testify by Common. Alright, mate, I just thought I'd take a couple of seconds, to say thank you for listening, because no one ever listens to these. If you bang them at the end, people just skip a minute, so I appreciate you listening to it. If you could do us a favour, though, follow us on the socials, mate. You'll be able to see my bad taxidermy, you'll be able to see me ebooks and that, and what else I'm up to. And if you've got the time as well, find yourself Threshold.fm. You can hear me radio shows, and you can hear me other radio show as well, Truth Seeking. Anyway, I told you I wouldn't take you for long, so yeah, we'll get back into it. Here you go. Anyway, back to the fella in Cumbria. The Men in Black allegedly kept asking the man if and where he saw the spacesuit fella. But when he finally explained it to the MIBs, that it was only visible in the photograph, they fucking kicked off and got angry with him, almost like it was like they'd wasted their own time on this guy. Now, for people that supposedly can travel through time, why would they be bothered about wasting time? Surely they can just go back to when they need to be, but maybe they need to be a certain age to be able to implement what's going on. I'm not sure. What if they're a certain creature and they only get 1 hour of their life where they can time travel? It's possible. There might be rules. I don't know what the rules would be. They seem to rewrite them in every film that comes out that even touches on time travel or interdimensional travel. But like, why were they angry? And so angry as well to kick off with him. What if someone or something is trying to move into our dimension and they thought that this occurrence would be the start of it, but it actually wasn't? Did this Cumbrian man almost start interdimensional warfare over a picture of a young girl and a stranger in fancy dress? We just can't be too sure. One of the earliest accounts of the Men in Black in the 20th century was in 1947. The same year, the exact same year as the Roswell incident, so it's safe to assume that people were already looking for UFOs. But what if I told you this happened 2 weeks before Roswell? Would that change anything in your mind? I mean, I don't know if it was or if it wasn't, but I mean, would it change your opinion? Anyway, it was a man by the name of Dahl, and he had this experience, but his experience led him somehow. I mean, my notes on this were sparse. I think I'd had enough after doing so long of reading. Pretty much just the same stuff. There's not a lot out there on it, but anyway, his experience led him to this man called Fred Chrisman, an ex-military man who claims to have fought with evil monsters in a cave in Burma during World War II. Now, that's interesting in itself, and that should get its own episode, I think, the Monster Cave of Burma, which kind of sounds like it would be, like how they have them women that fire ping pong balls out their holes. I was going to say cunt, but it sounds a bit aggressive, but out of fanny. They fire ping pong balls out of fanny, and that kind of sounds like what a monster cave of Burma could be, except it's like all hairy and that, and fucking maybe diseased, and it's got like a creature climbing out of it. Maybe they just fucking shove, I don't know, dead kittens in there and force them out to this imprisoned woman in, I assume in Burma. She doesn't have to be Burmese. Would you be Burmese if you're from Burma? They wouldn't have to be. They could have been imported from somewhere else. Could be an American woman purposely forcing out cats during World War II in a cave to entertain soldiers, but it went bad and the soldiers started fighting her, being like, oh my god, what the fuck is going on here? Get rid of these kittens. This is fucking mental. Stop it now. But, I mean, where was it going? Kittens. Kittens, I'll tell you now, guys, that kittens isn't written down anywhere. The fuck was I doing? Dahl. I've just got Dahl written down. Who the fuck was Dahl? Dahl, Fred Chrisman. Chrisman was that military guy that fought the cave. Oh shit, yeah, right, okay, yeah. Fred Chrisman apparently fought these evil monsters in a cave in Burma during World War II. Don't know what year. So, I was wondering, what if World War II was fought between humans and monsters? What if the whole global dominance thing that we're told that the Nazis was going for was just purely because the world powers were concentrating on fighting monsters in caves, so they could, take advantage of the situation? Now, if that's true, then who's the true monster, guys? One thing that was cool to discover, though, that I thought was pretty sick, to be fair, was that maybe the name of Bender in Futurama came about from a guy that was called Albert Bender, who I think started the international. I don't know why my notes. I don't know why this page of notes is so bad, but I think he started the International Flying Saucers Bureau. But he stopped doing it in 1953, where he released a strange statement saying, "We advise those engaged in saucer activity to please be very cautious." Now, his mates and his family and that claim that he was very agitated and nervous around that time as well. And he's definitely worth looking into. I'll probably do an episode on him another time, because he seems to have a lot going on. Like, I imagine the International Flying Saucers Bureau has a lot of stories, so that might be like my sort of interesting historical character that we're going to look at, like when we looked at Adam Worth and that pirate fella, Henry Avery. Now, I feel like I might have time as well in this week to actually give my own interpretation of the MIBs, instead of just asking you questions to see what you think. Now, personally, I think they're probably real, because I think they're more than likely interdimensional beings, maybe not the same as the usual interdimensional aliens that we talk about every week, but maybe from a different dimension from them. Or they're from the same dimension but completely devoid of all emotion and wants that makes them into some form of guard of sort. Not like a guard dog, but like a gatekeeper of sort of thing. Who keeps things ticking over and working correctly, You know what I mean? Just keeps it going, keeps the worlds aligned and working properly. Because if you think about it, they seem to be like a sort of stagehand for time and reality, because they're dressed in all black as well, like a stagehand. They interfere with the flow of events like a stagehand. No one really knows who they are, like a stagehand. And even if you do know who they are, you can't always tell that they're there until they want you to know that they're there, and they suddenly fucking pick up a table and the table floats across the fucking scene of the play, like what a stagehand does. So if we do live inside the Truman Show, are the Men in Black just the stagehands of whatever this performance is? The unseen movement, the unseen force, the wind, the physical wind that can shift things, But maybe they're not, I'm not too sure. These are just, my opinions now. So what if they're like a weird form of physical manifestation of antivirus software? Like the Mr. Smith in The Matrix, If we do live in a simulation, it makes sense that there would be some form of secret program to ensure everything goes smoothly. What if that's what free will is in religious texts? What if free will is literally the opportunity to peek behind the veil of our known world? But the reason we need free will is so that the Men in Black's threats actually work, and they can say, look, this is where we come in. We can give you the opportunity. The idea of that red pill and the blue pill, and the one of them being, you can know all this happens, and it's going to fuck your life up, make it really difficult. You're not going to enjoy life anymore. Or we can make you forget about it by hypnotising you, and you just go back and you don't know any of this. Do you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense to you as you're hearing this, or is it just because I've spent so long down this fucking rabbit hole that really does seem to lead nowhere? Like a black hole. It's more like a black hole, the Men in Black hole. It doesn't, like, normally when they jump down these little rabbit holes of the conspiracy stuff and that, it leads somewhere. Like, this has led me to, like, Albert Bender and that, and the black-eyed children, which I haven't even mentioned. I didn't even manage to fit them in. But it's led me to them, and we'll discuss them, But another time, it just seems weird that there's so much about them, but not much at all. It's weird. It's just the same stuff repeated, and I don't like doing ones where I feel like I'm just repeating what other people have been saying in it. But there are going to be weeks like that, I guess. I mean, even in my notes, like I've been saying, my notes are sparse. There's bits in my notes that we haven't really covered. As I say, the black-eyed children being one of them. Like, there's some form of demonic kid that hangs around with them in the car. So these drive around in all black and they keep these kids with them. Now, if you think about all of the fucking pedo scandals and that's grown people taking children. What if they've managed to become like real people? What if the makeup and their real life CGI and all that of the Men in Black has just become so realistic and look like humans? And that's why a lot of these people that are like celebrity pedos and stuff like that, maybe that's why they look so fucking weird. Maybe it's not because we think to ourselves, fuck me, they fucking fiddle kids, they're weirdos. What if it's just literally because they haven't got the cloaking down quite right yet? Because I bet now in the Discord there's probably going to be someone posting pictures of known fucking diddlers, and being like, yeah, look at this guy's nose, this guy's cheeks, this woman's chin, that's not quite right, is it? Look at their eyes, and all this sort of stuff that you see on the internet. So what if that's what it is? But that would mean that the kids that they're taking aren't actually real kids at all. They're the black-eyed children. Now, what if I was right about The Little Mermaid, and The Little Mermaid film was a way to teach demons how to take over children's bodies, but they didn't really work. They couldn't get it all right perfectly all the time. And then sometimes in these kids, a demon does spout out inside them. It sprouts and it blossoms inside the child, and they're now a demon kid, the black-eyed children perhaps. And then the Men in Black go and collect them. And like, yep, we've got some. The armies are growing. The army of darkness, fucking... This is my boomstick. And they're just fucking holding because they're all celebrities and that, they're just holding a microphone on a pole, not instead of a shotgun. But, yeah, we didn't even go into whether or not Niagara Falls is an entrance to the Men in Black's world, But I think the episode has given us a lot of scope for the future. Lots of topics added to the list, and I'll fucking see you in a bit, guys.